The bells of Silken Gate tolled low, heavy, their echoes rolling through valleys draped in white silk. Inside the grand hall of the Church of Wind, the air was thick with the scent of freshly spun dragon silk. Dim light filtered through curtains woven from shimmering dragon scales, spilling onto the cold stone floor below. Julian stood there, broad shoulders still beneath a cloak embroidered with golden thread. He did not look at his bride. His eyes, storm gray and deep as a sky on the brink of breaking, were fixed on the fragile threads suspended in the air. Only he could see them, threads of fate, trembling violently, heralding an ending he had foreseen. Beside him, Ilara stood rigid, her dragon silk veil concealing eyes blazing with restrained fury. Her hands, hidden beneath the wide folds of her gown, trembled slightly, not with fear, but with the weight of a small silver pair of shears concealed in her sleeve. The elder stepped forward, his hands completely transformed into rigid, white silk, lifeless, unfeeling. The price of touching supreme power for far too long. The thread of Julian, disentangler of dreams. The thread of Ilara, weaver of ashes. The elder's voice rasped like torn fabric. Today, the two of you shall be rewoven as one, to mend the fracture of time. This magic required no words, only the submission of matter itself. A dry, brittle crack echoed through the valley, like a colossal loom snapping out of rhythm. Blinding light burst from their bound hands. When it faded, the elder collapsed to the floor, spiderweb fractures spreading across his silk-white arms. Ilara gasped and staggered back, trying to flee this cursed ceremony, but when she reached her third step, an invisible force unyielding as iron chains yanked her backward. She fell hard against Julian's solid chest. "You can't go anywhere," Julian said, his voice low, thick with shock and dread. He raised his hand. Between his wrist and Ilara's, a pitch-black strand of dragon silk shimmered dark, intricate, twisted into an impossibly complex knot. It could not be touched by mortal hands, yet it radiated such pressure that the very air around it warped. "What did you do?" Ilara hissed, wrenching at her arm. The more she struggled, the tighter the thread cinched, flushing her skin red. "I didn't do anything." Julian stared at the obsidian knot. "Our fate has been knotted. If we move too far apart, the fabric of reality itself will tear." Ilara met the gray eyes of the man she had just sworn herself to, then looked toward the open doors of the great hall. Her freedom, her plans, all of it was now bound to a man she had never meant to stay with. Outside, the wind continued to howl along the cliffs. It sounded like the lament of a loom that had miswoven the most important fabric in the world. The great hall lay silent, broken only by the wind whistling through the stone crevices. Julian and Ilara stood facing one another, or rather, staring at the invisible space that shackled them together. The pitch-black thread had not vanished. It had sunk into the skin at their wrists, leaving a faint welt like a merciless reminder. "We can't stand here forever." Julian broke the silence. His voice was strangely calm, though his hand tightened slightly. "The wedding is over. By ritual, we must return to Silkhold Manor to present ourselves before the clan elders." Ilara let out a mirthless laugh, her lips pressed thin beneath the veil she had already pushed aside. "Present ourselves? You mean explain to them that the greatest disentangler of Silken Gate has just knotted himself to a woman he doesn't even know?" "I didn't knot anything," Julian replied coldly. He took a single step toward the door. Instantly, Ilara felt a sharp tug at her wrist that made her stagger. By instinct, she had to step forward to relieve the pressure. 3 meters, that was the non-negotiable limit. If he moved, she had to follow. If she stopped, he would be dragged back. "Don't order me around with your feet," Elara snapped, even as she was forced to walk alongside him. They exited the church. Outside, the people of Silken Gate were kneeling in reverence. To them, dragon silk was more than material, it was dragon as currency, the breath of the economy itself. Weavers in cloaks of rough silk lined the street, their eyes shining with awe at the faded couple. They had no idea that beneath the layers of luxurious fabric lay suffocation by coercion. The waiting carriage was lined with the softest dragon silk carpets. As they entered the cramped space together, the physical pressure of the black thread eased slightly, but the mental strain intensified. Julian sat opposite Elara. In the dim interior of the carriage, he could see the fine threads surrounding her. They were tangled, barbed, unstable. Elara was no ordinary weaver. She carried a chaos he had never encountered. "The shears in your sleeve," Julian said suddenly, his gaze still fixed out the window. "They're not an ordinary weaving tool, are they?" Elara stiffened. She subtly drew her hand deeper into the folds of her skirt. "They're a family relic. In Silken Gate, everyone carries some kind of weaving implement. Most people carry a shuttle to create life." Julian turned to look directly at her. "You carry shears to end it. Your thread? It has the color of ash." She didn't avert her gaze. Her heart raced not with love, but with the danger of being observed by someone who could see fate itself. "And are you any better, Julian?" She shot back, her voice low and sharp. "You untangle others, but your hands are already turning porcelain white. You're beginning to become dragon silk, aren't you? Your price is coming due, and you use this marriage to delay your own disappearance from reality." Julian fell silent. She was right. Every time he unraveled a knot of destiny, part of his flesh paid the price in numbing silk. His fingers had already begun to stiffen, losing the ability to feel warmth. The carriage jolted violently as it crossed a scar in the ground, a place where an ancient dragon had once risen, leaving behind a bottomless pit. Elara lost her balance and pitched forward. By reflex, Julian reached out and caught her shoulder. The moment his hand touched her, a surge of electricity ran through the black thread binding them. The knot flared with light, and for a single instant they both saw the same vision: a palace collapsing, and a colossal black dragon devouring the sun. They recoiled from each other, breathing hard. "You saw it too, didn't you?" Elara whispered, her face drained of color. "A consequence of the knot," Julian said, staring at his trembling hand. "Our minds are starting to leak into each other. If we don't find a way to undo this, we won't just be bound physically. Our darkest secrets won't belong to us alone anymore." The carriage came to a halt before the gates of Silkhold Manor. The doors opened onto a space of opulence and cold restraint. This would be their shared cage for the next 30 days, or until one of them fully paid their price to magic. "We'll have to play our parts." Julian rose and extended a hand to Elara, the courtesy of a husband. "At least until I find a way to sever this black thread without erasing us both." Elara looked at his hand, then at her own wrist. She didn't take it, but she stepped down from the carriage, keeping just enough distance so the thread wouldn't tighten. "I won't wait for you to find a way, Julian," she thought, eyes turning toward the distant palace where her true target resided. "I'll cut everything myself, even you." Silkhold Manor was a labyrinth of billowing silk curtains and stone columns carved with coiling dragons. The light here was always honey gold, reflected from strands of the finest dragon silk stretched across the ceilings. But to Elara, the place felt no different from a gilded cage. "There is only one bedroom reserved for the lord and lady of the manor," Julian said, a note of fatigue in his voice as they stood before the sandalwood door. "The elders will be watching us. Any separation will be taken as a sign of rupture in this so-called historical men." Elara tightened her grip on the small satchel at her hip. "So I'm expected to sleep beside a man who can read my thoughts through threads of fate?" "I don't read thoughts," Julian stepped into the room, forcing Alara to follow. I only see the forks of destiny, and right now, yours is disturbingly obscured. The chamber was vast, dominated by a bed draped in the softest dragon silk fabric said to soothe even the most tormented souls. Yet the space between the two of them was taut, like a string pulled to the brink of snapping. Julian sat down on the edge of the bed and began removing his thin leather gloves. Alara froze when she saw his hands. In the glow of the oil lamps, 3 of Julian's fingers had completely lost their human hue. They were pure white, smooth, rigid cast, as if from solid dragon silk. He could no longer bend them naturally. Your price. It's spread, Alara murmured, the hostility in her voice unintentionally softening. Every knot I unravel for this world takes a piece of sensation from me, Julian said, staring at his hand with vacant eyes. That's why the elders wanted this marriage. They're hoping your weaving can compensate for my disappearance. Alara stepped closer, the 3-meter distance now shrinking to mere handbreadths. She raised her hand, almost touching the silk-hardened fingers, then stopped. She remembered the silver shears hidden in her sleeve. Her mission was to cut the king's thread, an act that would tear reality itself, something Julian, as a disentangler, would be bound to stop. They were 2 opposing poles tied together by a black knot. Why is it black? Alara asked, her gaze fixed on the wrist where the dark thread flickered beneath the skin. Dragon silk is always white or gold. The thread binding us carries the breath of ruin. Julian looked up. They were so close now he could see flecks of ash within her eyes. Because it wasn't woven from consent. It's a knot born of coercion and secrets. As long as we hide from each other, the thread will remain dark and heavy. Suddenly, a low roar echoed from beyond the valley. It wasn't the cry of a beast, but the deep tremor of massive dragon silk veins buried beneath the earth, the monetary lifeblood of all silken gate, now disturbed. Julian frowned and sprang to his feet. The sudden pull yanked Alara forward. She stumbled into him, and he instinctively wrapped an arm around her waist to keep her upright. Once again, electricity surged through the black knot, racing along both their spines. Something's wrong with the dragon silk vaults, Julian said, his breath brushing her forehead. We have to go, now. Alara pushed him away, forcing herself to regain composure. You intend to inspect the kingdom's treasure on your wedding night? Not treasure, Julian corrected, his expression grave. If the dragon silk is corrupted, the very foundation of this world will unravel. And our black thread, it's trembling. It wants to lead us there. Alara looked down at her hand. Fine black filaments were beginning to creep out from beneath her fingernails. She knew this might be her chance to get closer to the kingdom's true lifeline. Very well, disentangle her. She adjusted her gown, her sharp gaze returning. But remember, I'm following because the thread forces me to, not because I submit to you. They left the chamber together, 2 silhouettes pressed close as they moved toward the darkness of the silk valleys where a secret older than fate itself waited to be uncovered. Where darkness and light weave unspoken conspiracies. The entrance to Silken Gate's underground vault lay deep beneath ancient stone roots, where the air was thick with mineral dust and the clean, primal scent of raw dragon silk. This was the kingdom's heart, the place where small creatures known as silk dragons tirelessly spun the threads that underwrote the entire economy. Here, dragons were not warriors. They were artisans of prosperity, dragon as currency. Julian led Alara through narrow corridors, their walls lined with softly glowing silk cocoons. The enforced 3-meter distance between them made their movement resemble a hesitant dance through the dark. You feel it too, don't you? Alara whispered, her steps careful on the damp stone floor. The air here, it smells rotten. Yes, Julian replied, gripping a lantern fashioned from silk crystal. Dragon silk never decays unless the world source vein itself is being wounded. They stopped at the mouth of a vast cavern. At its center loomed a colossal cocoon, the primary reserve of Silken Gate. It should have radiated a brilliant silver-white light, but now ashen gray stains spread across its shimmering surface. The corrupted threads looked brittle and dry, stripped of any exchange value. Julian stepped closer. His silk-turned hand trembled as he extended it toward the cocoon. It's being drained. Someone is using loom-weaving magic to siphon the essence of dragon silk. Alara stood behind him, her heart pounding out of rhythm. She knew that magic well. It was how the king sustained his immortality by reweaving life from the shared source. Her fingers slipped into her sleeve, touching the cold silver shears. She could end this now, with a single, precise cut to the source thread. Don't touch it, Alara cried when she saw Julian about to press his porcelain white palm against the cocoon. Julian froze and turned to her. I'm a disentangler. If I don't find the knot behind this decay, the kingdom will collapse by tomorrow. Our currency will become nothing but worthless refuse. If you touch it, the price will be your entire body, Alara said, her voice faltering with an emotion she didn't fully understand, perhaps concern slipping through the shell of hatred. Look at your hands, Julian. You're barely human anymore. Julian glanced down at his arms, then at the black thread binding them together. He smiled bitterly. How ironic. A weaver worried about the safety of a disentangler. He ignored her warning and placed his palm against the cocoon. A surge of dark gray energy blasted into him instantly. Julian collapsed to his knees, breath tearing from his lungs. The black knot at their wrists ignited. Alara felt as if thousands of needles were piercing her skin. Because they were bound, Julian's pain became her own. She was yanked violently toward him, falling beside his convulsing form. In that moment of unbearable agony, shared vision flooded their minds. They saw the king seated upon a throne woven from the darkest of threads. And worse still, they saw that Julian and Alara's fates had not been knotted by accident. They had been engineered as a conduit, a living filter meant to absorb all the filth of royal magic. Julian tore his hand away, sweat soaking his body. The white silk had spread up to his elbows. We're just pawns meant to keep the fabric clean for them, Julian gasped, slumping against the cold rock wall. Alara supported him, her trembling hand brushing sweat from his brow. The distance between them was no longer 3 meters. There was no distance at all. In the vault's darkness, the truth they had uncovered made one thing clear. The enemy was not the person standing before them, but the one holding the loom far above. They want to use us to mend their mistakes, Alara whispered, her gaze colder and more resolute than ever. But they don't realize that when a weaver and a disentangler stand on the same side, we can tear apart the entire fabric of fate. Julian looked at her, a fragile spark of hope igniting in his gray eyes. He clasped her hand, the only one that still retained warmth. You still want to cut the king's thread? Now, Alara replied. I want to cut down his throne. Outside, the alarm bells of Silken Gate began to ring in rapid succession. The corruption of the Silk Vault had been discovered. They were running out of time. Heavy footsteps echoed from the main corridor. Torchlight flickered, casting long, ghost-like shadows across the silk-laden stone walls. Julian forced himself upright, his breathing still labored, but the familiar sharpness had returned to his eyes. The guards are coming. If they find us here now, your plan will fall apart before it even begins, Julian said hoarsely. Alara looked at his porcelain white hands, then toward the advancing light. She knew he was right. A disentangler and a weaver had no legitimate reason to be inside the royal reserves on their wedding night unless they were plotting treason. This way, Alara said, grabbing Julian's wrist, the one not yet consumed by silk, and pulling him toward a narrow passage hidden behind massive dragon silk cocoons. Bound by the black thread, Julian had no choice but to move close beside her. Their silk cloaks brushed against one another, whispering softly in the stillness. They slipped through a tight crevice that opened onto the sheer cliff face of the Silken Gate Valley. Cold wind rushed in, carrying the dampness of night mist and the familiar murmur of silk dragons spinning their cocoons. The small creatures clung to rocky outcrops, their bodies gleaming like scattered jewels as they tirelessly wove the prosperity of the kingdom. Julian leaned against the stone wall, his face pale in the moonlight. His arm had stiffened all the way to the elbow. He tried to move his fingers, but they only produced the dry, clicking sound of artificial material. "Why are you helping me?" Elara asked, her voice so quiet it was nearly swallowed by the wind. "You could have handed me over to the guards. They would have praised you for capturing a rebel." Julian closed his eyes, feeling the numbness spreading through his veins. "Because I've seen your thread. It doesn't just carry the color of ash, it holds a longing for freedom I lost long ago. If you disappear, then the price I've paid for this kingdom becomes meaningless." Elara fell silent. She watched the silk dragon spinning strands harder than diamond, confined within stone enclosures to serve human ambition. She realized she and Julian were no different gilded tools trapped in beautiful cages. "I have a refuge at the edge of the valley," Elara whispered. "The fog there is thick. The guards won't search for us. We need time to understand this black knot." They followed a narrow, precarious path along the cliff. Every step required an uncanny synchronization. Julian led the way with eyes that could see through tangled strands of fate, helping them avoid patrol routes. Elara used her skilled hands to weave veils of illusory mist, erasing their trail. When they reached a small hut hidden behind a waterfall of silver silk, Julian collapsed into a wooden chair. Elara lit a small candle, its weak yellow flame dancing across their faces. "Let me see your wounds," Elara said, kneeling beside him as she gently took his porcelain white hand. For the first time, she truly touched skin that had become dragon silk. It was cold, smooth, and lifeless, no pulse beneath it. A wave of sorrow rose in her chest. To keep the world from unraveling, this man had allowed himself to disappear piece by piece. "Don't grieve," Julian said softly. Though he could no longer feel her touch, he could see Elara's emotional thread trembling in a gentle shade of blue. "This was my choice." "No, it was a sacrifice forced upon you," Elara countered, her eyes burning. "And I won't let them take what little you have left." The black knot between their wrists softened, glowing with the warm light. For the first time since being bound, the thread no longer felt painful. Understanding had begun to awaken a different kind of magic, one not forged on the king's loom. Julian looked at Elara, and in that moment he no longer saw a dangerous weaver, but the only companion he had left in the darkness. Then, Julian smiled faintly. "Where do we begin, my weaver?" Elara opened her palm, revealing the silver shears. "We find the first origin point of this black thread, and we unravel it not by cutting it, but by weaving a new truth." Outside, fog swallowed Silken Gate whole, concealing two souls who were just beginning to learn how to breathe in the same rhythm.